Welcome, everyone. Jeff Jensen, Director of Community Programs, here with Trees Forever. Can't thank you enough for joining us. It's not quite noon, so we're going to give it just another minute here before we get started officially. We have got a great set of panelists today. We have from Franklin County, Alex Meyer. We've got Tanner Bouchard from Dickinson County. And then we have Ryan Wilcke from Cerro Gordo County. They're going to be joining us here in a little bit. Well, now hold on. See, that's me getting ahead of myself again. I just about went and did my introduction, and it's not even 12 noon. And there it is, 12 noon. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this webinar. This is our Roadside Roundtable, and we've got some fantastic roadside managers with us today. Alex Meyer from Franklin County, Tanner Bouchard from Dickinson, and Ryan Wilcke over there in Mason City, Cerro Gordo County. They're going to be joining us here in a little bit. But first, I wanted to just give you a quick introduction to our presentation today. This is going to be a roundtable. We're going to have each, Alex, Tanner, and Ryan, say a few words. We have a short video to accompany each roadside program, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. Now, a reminder, you should be able to see and hear us, but we can't see or hear you. And so the way that you can communicate with us is in the questions box. So that's where you should type your questions. As the questions come up throughout the day for each individual, please go ahead and type them in, and then at the very end, we'll come together as a group of panelists here and get all of your questions answered. These gentlemen have a wealth of knowledge, and it was a lot of fun spending some time with each one of them in their respective counties, learning more about their program and the great work that they do. Reminder, go to webinar, just a little refresher. This is going to be recorded. So if you need to get up and go to the bathroom and you miss something, no problem. These presentations are recorded. You should receive a link in an email once we post them to our YouTube page. But you can always check out some of the past Stewards of the Beautiful Land webinars, and then, of course, this one here as soon as we get it posted. I also want to encourage you to connect with us on Facebook. So you can join the Stewards of the Beautiful Land Facebook group at that link there. And I'll also include that in the follow-up email. It's just a chance to maybe showcase some of the natives that you have growing in your backyard or a roadside. And we have all sorts of great fun with that, so check that out. Also want to encourage you to save the date for a couple of more webinars coming up here, September 6th and the 27th. On the 27th, we have a really treat for everyone. We're going to have Phil Kerr come back, and he's done some great presentations in the past on the different landforms of Iowa, specifically up in Northeast Iowa, not the karst region, but the Northeast Iowa. I forgot that landform already. I'll have to edit that out. But he's going to talk to us about the last glacier in Iowa, the Des Moines Lobe. And so this is going to be a fascinating talk. So join us over the noon hour on the 27th. And then some field days. I know it's hot now, but it's going to cool down eventually. And so join us outside Wednesday, September 13th, over in Swan Lake State Park near Carroll for a tree planting and a walk in the woods. The next week, we're going to be in Dickinson County at the Mazer Monarch Lodge. We're going to do a prairie walk and have a planting over there. And then the next day, we're going to be in Franklin County at Mains Grove Lodge. We're going to do another prairie walk and tree planting. That'll be fun. And then Saturday, down in Mahaska County, they're going to do some hand seeding, a prairie planting using hand seeding at the Cedar Bluff State Preserve. So check out that opportunity as well. And then tomorrow, I just want to highlight this. If you're not aware, we have T-Bone Feely with the DNR talking about woodland invasive species, the ticking time bomb that is our woodlands. With the derecho that came through, with all of our other threats to our woodlands, EAB and others, we're seeing more trees die. We're seeing forests break up. And wherever we have holes in the forests or edges, those are prime locations for invasive species to pop up. So he'll be talking about some of those invasive species and control and some things like that. With that, let's get into it. We're going to start off with Alex Meyer.
Yes, my name is Alex Meyer. My title is Resource Manager and Roadside Manager.
Alex, what are some of the pieces of equipment that you use?
Some of the main equipments that we use yearly, we have a tractor and a 10-foot mower. If we can get in the ditch, we will use that. pull behind UTV brush mower, which is very handy for on inclines and tight spots. Seeding wise, a hydro seeder, we use that a lot. We tend to use that more due to if we use a broadcast seeder and a tractor, compaction. Normally the bottom of a ditch is wet as well. You get stuck easier. And we do have a UTV Truax seeder, little broadcast seeder, which is really handy. We got that a couple years ago from LRTF grant. It's helped us out. And we have used the drill. It's kind of bulky to get in sometimes, but if you got a wide spot, drilling, you won't have to worry about much. You can drill it in, pretty much walk away. Hydro seeder is really unique, and it helps us roadside managers in the aspect of it's a big tank of water per se, and you put the seed in with the water, and we use mulch, and mulch has a tactifier. So if you, let's say you were gonna seed a ditch with a hydro seeder, we normally put the seed in with the water and do the section of ditch. Then afterwards, we add the mulch in. Normally the mulch comes in bales, and there's a big agitator in there that blends the mulch in. Then we spray the mulch over top of the seed. Then as it dries out, it hardens. As a ditch, there's slopes to deal with, and you don't want erosion. And it also gives the seed a blanket per se when it rains, keep moisture in and birds from eating the seed that you lay down.
Where do you get your native seed?
So each year, like myself and other roadside managers, we kind of do a forecast per se on how much acres of seed we need for that allotted year. And we get all of our seed from the Tallgrass Prairie Center down at UNI down there.
Tell me about some of the woody species you deal with and how you manage them.
Trees can be challenging. Some different trees, ash, cottonwood can get in there. Depending how big they are, I like to foliar spray. Kind of got to be careful when you do that, especially if you have an established planting that you want to take care of. In the wintertime too, it's easier. The foliage is laid down and you can go in there with the chainsaws and have somebody follow up with some cut stump treatment after.
Explain one of the most challenging aspects of your job.
The most challenging part is probably, honestly, the weather. You don't know when it's going to snow. You don't know, like the last couple of years have been a drought. It's been challenging for newer seedings to get going, so we'll see where this year's and last year's are. And also the rain, if you do a seeding and you get 6 inches of rain, which has happened, it could wash everything out and you have to start over. But in the end, it's very rewarding. As in a prairie guy like myself, it takes a long time to takes a long time to see your results, and the results that you see in the end are very rewarding.
What tasks keep you busy in the late fall and winter?
Late fall is sometimes it's trees, taking care of trees that we can get to and we won't damage other plants that are sensitive. And also it's an opportunity for me to get my records, update my seeding records, and also service equipment. We use a hydro seeder, broadcast seeder, and things like that to get them ready to get them ready for the following year. The LRTF, or the Living Roadway Trust Fund, helps us out a lot. Allows us to get seed. Without them, we couldn't seed anything with native plants and things. And also, it's beneficial for us because they have cost share programs. We've gotten grants from them for our hydro seeder, broadcast seeder, and there's other opportunities for other stuff as well to use for the roadsides.
Alex, thanks so much for your time today and giving us a sneak peek into a day in the life of an Iowa roadside manager. Okay, wonderful. I really enjoyed my time over in Franklin County with Alex. Alex, thanks for joining us here. Tell us a little bit more about the roadside program in Franklin County.
Ours is, I would say, on the smaller scale, but we do our best each year. Ours, I looked it up. Been on file. We have an IRVM on file for the last 18 years. I don't know if that's as high or old as Cerro Gordo's or other ones, but it's up there anyways. Just venture to guess on miles for IRVM or native vegetation in the right of way we have done or I have identified in Franklin. It's really tough to guess. I'd say upwards of 50 miles, secondary roads, and if you count Highway 65 that goes through here too, I know the state has done some too. Ours is very sprinkled out because we are pretty rural. And I guess my title, our program, I'm a resource manager and a roadside manager as well. So I try to balance the best of both worlds, say.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Alex, thank you for joining us here today. Alex will join us at the end here when we bring all of our panelists together for a little Q&A. But in the meantime, let's move on to the Okoboji Great Lakes area, and I'm going to bring up Tanner Bouchard, and we'll jump into it.
My name is Tanner Bouchard. I am the Roadside Vegetation Manager and the Weed Commissioner for Dickinson County. Yeah, so originally I'm actually from southwest Iowa, so not used to the flatlands, but I moved up here because I really enjoyed the lakes. I've always had a job up here since college. I had internships as a seasonal with Dickinson County in the past, then I had internships as a water patrol officer up here with the state. Ultimately, I just really enjoyed working with the people I worked with and where I worked at the county, and I came back almost a year and a half ago as the Roadside Program Manager, and I love it up here. There's plenty to do. There's lots of hunting and fishing, which is more than enough to keep me happy. About our roadside program, sometimes you see people have roadside programs with secondary roads or the Conservation Board. Ours is actually through our Conservation Board. We work out of the same office. It's me, then we have a full-time technician, a part-timer. In the summer we have a seasonal. So it's usually a 4-person staff during the heat of the summer, and our yearly goals are usually 100% coverage of thistles throughout the county, which is close to 1,226 miles, and then we have 50% coverage on brush, and we always have goals to burn, but we are also in a very windy area of the state, so if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We try to put as much fire in the ground as we can. 3% of the county right-of-ways to be seeded, usually in the fall of every year. Whether we get that, we usually do. There are years that in the future, we're gonna have to take break years just because it's so much mowing. But then a lot of mowing, and then a lot of work order systems. I said we don't work for secondary roads. However, we do have a very good relationship with them. We actually have the same work order system with them, so they can send me work orders that they receive from farmers, and I can go out there and cut them and mark them complete so that they know what not to do or what still needs to be done. So it's a very symbiotic relationship, and it goes very smoothly. So right now, the sort of things that are keeping me busy would be the start of our brush spraying season, a lot of maintenance mowing since we plant close to 100 acres of roadside each year. They all need maintenance mowed. We mow them for 3 years. So that's really entailing a lot of our time right now. We're also ramping up our fall spraying season, which would be our leafy spurge. And if we do have any fall control for thistles that we need to take care of, we're looking at that.
Let's go spray some weeds.
So right now for our woody stems or shrub management, what we do is if it's really big or poses a potential risk of right-of-way encroachment or visual risk to where people can't see past it, we go and we chainsaw it down. However, we do try to spray about 50% of our county for brush every year, and the stuff that we cannot get to, or if we don't have time that year, we might contract it out. But we also burn some of our right-of-ways, especially the ones with natives, to try to keep that young brush out of there. So the average day for me as a roadside manager up here is anything from mowing down maintenance mowings from previous years that we've planted, hydro mulching with a hydro mulcher, spraying thistles, spraying brush, chainsawing, and also working with local landowners on weed complaints and weed management strategies. You know, I never knew if I'd actually get into this job as much as I did because I'm kind of one of the guys that likes to see a change quick. You know, if I do something, I want to see the results just like that. However, it is very satisfying to put in 3 years of maintenance mowing and then see that seed come up and see that prairie actually work with the ecosystem and combat some of the weeds. It's very, very satisfying. The most challenging aspect of my job would probably be balancing weed commissioner part of my job and the roadside vegetation part of my job. I get a lot of weed commissioner complaints. We're in a very immaculate area where people treat their properties very well. And it's very noticeable if there is a weed issue, which is more than fine by me. But it does take up some of our busiest time, which is mowing. So every year it's anywhere from 25 probably to 35, sometimes 40 calls that I have to go on. I go investigate every one. So if you think about the month of June, that does take time out of almost every day. Yeah, so a vast majority of our native seed mixes come from the Tallgrass Prairie Center located in Cedar Falls. It's a very diverse mix, which you need in the roadway to combat most of the weeds that'll encroach. It also does really good. Farmers sometimes overspray in areas, and if there's a diverse enough mix of natives in there, then when they spray them, luckily something else will grow up later in the year. So it really helps us quite a bit.
Fantastic, and thank you, Tanner. That was a lot of fun going over to Okoboji, getting to experience the Mazer Monarch Lodge, which is an amazing facility, I have to say. There's Tanner there. Tanner, tell us a little bit more about your IRVM program in Dickinson County.
Yeah, so our program here in Dickinson County, I think our first IRVM plan was probably put on there around 2014 or 2016. When it was first started, we kind of just did areas that needed seeded cleanouts or residential areas that were requested to be seeded. Then our board of supervisors several years ago, they really wanted to get on board with a conservation plan to kind of keep our watershed up here, which is our main source of our revenue and everything. The county basically runs off of Lake Okoboji, so but to keep that water clean. So that's when they decided about 3% of the county to be planted every year. It was definitely a big amount considering the fact that we're still doing our cleanouts and everything. But so far we've been able to get the seed in the ground every year, maintaining it every year. And it's nice to be in a county that is so involved, conservation minded like that. So, pretty much just noxious weed control as my weed commissioner side of my job involves in our county a lot of Canada thistle. We're pretty lucky to where we don't have a ton of the noxious weeds that you would find in woodland habitats just because we have so much more grassland. However, we are encountering kind of a bump up in numbers of our leafy spurge population.
Excellent, excellent. So you're planting your ditch cleanouts, 3%. And then, of course, on top of all of that, you have probably Iowa's largest tourism destination of Lake Okoboji. I was amazed when we got together, Tanner, you talking about the role as weed commissioner, and to me it sounded like you were 1/3 education, 1/3 weed detective, and 1/3 sleuth, just to track some of these folks down, because I forget there's a lot of second homes up there in the lakes, and so they're not necessarily always around to maybe tend to their property. And so tell us a little bit about that and what those interactions are like.
Yeah, so typically once I get a weed complaint, I go and look at it. Usually it's right around that time where those weeds are about to seed out. So you want to try to track somebody down as fast as possible. However, like you were mentioning, up here in Dickinson County, there's a lot of properties that are owned by people in California, Texas, New Mexico. Luckily, I haven't had an out-of-country one yet. But it does provide its unique challenges trying to figure out how to get a hold of some of these people who might only be up here for several weeks out of the year. It is always reassuring because every person you talk to, obviously they care about not having noxious weeds on their land just as much as the person who complained. But like you said, lots of times they're not up here. So It's a lot of, like you said, investigating. You know, sometimes they own a local business, or sometimes their neighbors know when they're coming up, or maybe they have a kid that lives in the state. It's a lot of tracking people down.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much. Okay, last but not least, we're going to have Ryan Wilcke with Cerro Gordo County.
All right, my name's Ryan Wilcke. I'm the Roadside Vegetation Manager for Cerro Gordo County Conservation, and I'm also their Weed Commissioner. We started our program in 1988.
Exactly.
We were the fifth county to start a roadside program. We were one of the pioneers, one of the grandfathers of this whole thing. I believe with LRTF, I think they've been giving out seed for 27 or 28 years. We've received seed every year, but I believe the first year. So we've been kind of right there. We've been one of the people right in the front. We've got one of the most extensive programs that I know of. We have 3 full-time staff, manager, and then 2 specialists below me. So we're out here rocking and rolling. A lot of places it's just the manager, and then I have a few seasonals. So we're out here trying to get things done and get things accomplished in a good way. All right, so basically like all the other roadside managers, I'm in the trenches and we're doing the not as fun part of the job. Right now it's our spray season. So we just finished our thistle spray season, which typically is about the very end of May to almost the very beginning of, or the end of July, I should say. And we just switched over to our brush spraying season. So the way we do it, we run 2 trucks and we'll have 2 people in each truck. We'll have one guy driving and one guy will be sitting on the back. We've got a little chair apparatus back there and they sit and they're just running and gunning. They're the assassin. They're a trained killer. That's what they're back there to do. So that we'll be doing that till about the beginning of October, or till when you start spraying trees, the leaves blow off when you hit them. So we typically will run the entire county for our thistle season, and we have over 950 miles of roads that we cover, which is roughly 1,900 miles of right-of-way that we got to take care of. So it's kind of a big challenge for us, and we got 3 full-time staff out there just going after it. Throughout the whole summer, basically that April through October time is we're busy spraying, and we'll mix in some hydroseeding as well. We got the whole county to manage for any public right-of-way ditch cleaning, and luckily for us, we have our own seed, so it's pretty easy to get out there and get everything seeded, and it's nice because it's going back into natives. A lot of other places will contract it, and it's going back into brome and other stuff that's not quite as nice or ideal to be seeing in the roadside. The thing that brings me joy is when I'm just driving around the county and I see this just little teeny blip of boom, prairie right there. And I know that was a spot that we hydroseeded or somebody before me hydroseeded, so that kind of gives me a little bit of pride. Hydroseeding, so you're standing on this big huge trailer with just a giant drum spinning full of water. You got the gun on the back, and you just drive nice and slow. You mix it with the hydro mulch, which is just like a wood fiber kind of mix. You put your tackifier in there to make it stick, and you just spray the ditch green. It's pretty straightforward, simple. We've got a trash pump on the front of our unit, so we'll find some creek somewhere throughout the county, pull up, and we'll fill up, and you got to be quick because he's coming in hot and fast, and you got to be throwing your bales in and your seed and being ready to go, or else she's going to start spitting out the top. Using hydroseeding is just really quick, so that's the part that makes that nice. So if you had to come back in and you wanted to drill it, which is, I'd say, probably the ideal way to do a prairie restoration, there's a little bit more site prep. Hydroseeding, you can get in there now, get it in. You put a cover crop in with it too, because your natives take a little bit of time to establish. So we usually put in some sort of cover crop of a fall rye later in the year, annual rye, and oats. So it just gets something grow up green right away, and then the next season we'll start to see our natives popping up. The thing that's unique about our county is out this way we've got 10 acres of native seed production plots that we have. So in the fall, we'll go out there and we have our own prairie habitat seed stripper. It looks like a big broom on a wagon behind us, and we go through and we'll harvest all the seed. And then when it's the dog days, a cold, we'll go through and we'll clean it all with a fanning mill and a hammer mill, and we'll run it all through clean. And we'll typically get around 1,000 pounds of seed throughout the year doing that. We also kind of have in our back pocket that we've been working on our new planning for the year. With the LRTF, Living Roadway Trust Fund, they give us seed every year, and we try to do a minimum of 10 acres of prairie restoration every year. So actually yesterday I had one of my staff out. He picked the new site we're going to be at, and he went and got it mowed, and we'll be getting it sprayed here within the next few weeks so we can get the seed in the ground this fall. Oh, I think it's great that we have this opportunity in our state to get seed just handed to us. If it was something I had to purchase out of my budget, I don't think I'd be able to put 10 acres in every year. Even with us getting our own seed that we clean and harvest ourselves, I gotta kind of really allocate where I'm gonna put it, because I never know how many ditch cleanouts we're gonna have each year. So it's kind of tough to budget it and be planned out accordingly to make sure we don't run out in the middle of the year. Because if you look at it dollars and cents, it's a heck of a program.
Okay, I had a blast over at Lime Creek Nature Center where Ryan showed me all the different prairies that they have and some of their equipment. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Tell me a little bit more about your program and then maybe a sense of what it's like for Ryan throughout the year.
Alrighty, thanks, Jeff, for having us here today. I'll give you guys some stats here first. Our roadside program started in 1988. So we were the 5th one actually in the county to start. So we were kind of one of the pioneers, one of the grandfathers getting this done. Like I said in the video, we got 3 full-time staff rocking and rolling, and then we'll have a seasonal as well. I'm the roadside vegetation manager, and I have 2 staff below me, 2 roadside vegetation specialists, Barry Stecker and Lakota Curse. We manage 968 miles of roadside in our county. And with that, 268 miles are pavements and about 700 is a gravel road. And, 968 sounds like quite a bit, but you got to remember the ditches on both sides of the road. So you got to double that. So we're actually managing 1,936 miles of right of way throughout the whole county, which gets to be quite a bit. And then if you really start to look down at it, that's roughly 6,575 acres of habitat that we have to manage. And for me, as a avid outdoorsman, it's nice to know we have that there, because that's just bonus public hunting ground for me. So, and everybody else gets to use it as well. I hope you guys all can fit in a size 10.5 shoe, because it's time for you guys to slip my shoes on and see what we do every day here throughout the year for Sarasota County Conservation. All right, so I can break this down for you guys. Basically, I'll break down like into the seasons, like spring, summer, fall, winter, and then I'll get a little bit more specific on some things. So just kind of bear with me here. I can prepare it a little bit. Spring, once the spring happens, the first thing we do as soon as the snow starts to melt, we jump right into the most fun part of the job, prescribed burning. So we have numerous restored prairies across the whole entire county. We've been having prairies going in ever since 1991. This is the first one that I could find on record. So that's 32 years, same year I was born, so it's really easy for me to remember. We try to get out and burn all these restoration sites as much as we can, try to get them all done, once every 3 to 5 years, but it's not as easy as you think. There's a lot of factors that go against you there. You got your wind, you got your weather conditions, your RH, and then the thing that's unique for us as roadside managers is when you have a nice site that's prepped and ready to go, it's pretty easy to lay fire on the ground. You got 2 really nice fire breaks. You got a road and you got a plowed field. But you got to make sure the field's plowed, because if you got corn or bean stubble in there, you can't put that fire down. It's gonna creep into the field and you're gonna have some problems. So after the burn season's over, we'll switch right into our spray season. And our spray season, our spray season starts in April, and we will start our noxious weed spray season with poison hemlock. That's the very first noxious plant to start to pop up for us. I've even seen it come up through the snow before, but luckily for us, it's not that big of a problem. We don't have a lot of it, and it's pretty easy for us to manage. Only takes a few days of a spraying for that to happen. After the hemlock, we set our sights on a pesky little plant called leafy spurge, probably my least favorite one to manage. This is typically end of May, early June when we got to go out and look for it. It's just really tough because, for one, it's just a very tough plant. It's hard to kill, and it's really small. So it's very difficult to find it in the roadside because you got your tall grass and then you got this little bitty short plant in there, and about 50-50 of the plants, are flowering when you spray them. So it's tough to see the ones that aren't flowered. So you kind of just spray and do a halo around every which one you see and try to get all the friends that you don't see. When we're done spraying leafy spurge, we move into our thistle season, which is probably the biggest season that we have. We're spraying thistles from the end of May till about the end of July, and we have all three of my staff are out every day we can, each in our truck with the boom busters, and we're trying to manage as much of it as possible. 100% coverage is ideal, but with all those miles we got to cover, sometimes it doesn't always get finished, and we do the entire roadside or the entire county for that. Once that's done, we switch to purple loosestrife about the beginning of August, and there's not a lot of that one, so that one's pretty easy for us to get done in a day or two. And after that, it's time for the brush spraying to start, and that's the season we're in right now. And we typically run that one, August to October, or basically when the leaves start falling off the trees. We'll manage half of the county each year for that. 1 year it'll be the north half, and then the next year will be the south, and we'll switch after. So that's how we do that. We've got two trucks running, try to at least every day, and we'll have one guy driving and the other guy will climb up on the chair like I demonstrated in the video, and they're just an assassin. They're out there spraying everything they can that's of the right size. It's a foliar application is what we're doing, and we're just trying to make our lives easier for when our brush season happens and we got to be out there and actually manually cutting trees. It's a little less labor intensive for us to spray them when they're small compared to us cut and remove them when they're large. So once we're done with our brush spraying season, we kind of move into our seed harvest, and that's kind of a unique thing for our county. I know not all our counties have it. We're one of the unique ones. We've got 10 acres of seed production plots right here at Lime Creek Conservation Area where I'm stationed. And in those plots, we harvest big blue stem, Indian grass, little blue stem, switchgrass, and side oats. And we have 10 acres of those, like I said. And then we will also go to our restoration sites and we'll hand harvest forb seed. So we'll get that all mixed together. And then once it gets really, really cold, we'll switch into going into all the seed and cleaning it through the hammer mill and the fanning mills. And we get about that 1,000 pounds once everything's mixed and it's all said and done. So after brush spraying season's done and seed harvest is done, that's when the real labor shows up. That's when we get to go out and we get to start brush cutting. And our county is unique. That's why we have 3 full-time staff. By the letter of the county, it's no woody vegetation in the right of way. We typically don't manage it completely that way, but if there's a complaint come in, then we're forced. I try to make sure all corners are visible. There's no side obstructions. All the signs are visible. And we try to have no brush within the front slope and like the bottom slope of the ditch. We can leave some stuff in the back. I think that's no problem. I think it offers some good habitat for some wildlife, but that's why we have such a large staff here, is for our brush control policy. And then lastly, once it starts to get too cold and the snow gets a little bit too deep, we'll push it for a while. When you're out there in your bibs with the chainsaw and you're belly button deep in the snow, you're like, all right, I think it's probably time to switch. And that's when we'll start doing the seed cleaning, and we'll transition to doing some maintenance as well. That's about really all you can do in the real cold winter time. So basically that's our typical year in a nutshell. If you want to hear any more about some of the things I kind of talked about, just feel free to ask us questions here at the round table, and I hope I helped. Thank you.
Well, what a great segue, Ryan. If we could have Tanner and Alex join us, we're going to jump into questions. And so folks with us at home, type in those questions in the questions tab, and we'll get to them in short order, one at a time. So starting right off the bat here. Oh, so this has to do with, so Ryan, when you, in the video, you were spraying. Can you actually explain to us, you're not just in your uniform with gloves on when you boys are out spraying. Give us a little rundown of what's really taking place that we didn't necessarily film.
Yeah, well, I made sure I put on my gloves so I had at least the proper PPE to be touching the equipment. But we'll have a full Tyvek suit on when we're out there spraying, and we'll wear our rubber boots, glasses, wear a hat, and so we got everything covered. And it's not as fun on a day like today. I kind of feel bad for my staff. I'm kind of happy I'm sitting in the office giving this presentation with you guys, because after a while the heat gets to be quite a bit. We try to be conscious about it with those suits. So any day that it's going to be 85 degrees or warmer, I'll have everybody come in early, and we'll try to beat the heat best we can.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, a question here on how you control your thistles. So is there a mix you use specifically for thistles?
Yeah. Go ahead, Tanner.
So every county is a little different. For us, we use a amino pure, which is called Milestone. We mix that at 7 ounces an acre. You try to spray it before it bolts out. Kind of like what Ryan said, you can try as your best to get everything in the county. Some years they grow faster than others. Some years they don't. Like this year, I think Dickinson County was one of the only counties that wasn't in a drought at the beginning of the year. So they grew just about perfect speed for us to keep up with them. But you want to get to them before they bolt. Since there's always smaller thistles that either got mowed or that you just don't see, we'll come back to some of the worst patches that we saw during our spring spraying in the fall, and we'll either hit it with Milestone again, or we'll switch to Transline and then go with that, just because it's a little bit easier on the forbs that are around it.
Excellent.
Yeah, we basically do the same thing. We just run a different chemical. It's called TerraView. It's just, I think, the newer version of Milestone, and the only difference is it's a granular instead of a liquid.
Excellent.
We use the same thing. TerraView works really well with parsnip as well.
Here's a question for you, Alex. Alex, you said your title was Resource Manager as well. So does that mean in addition to all the roadsides, you're managing all the parks in Franklin County?
Yes, I take, or myself and other staff take care of the parks, and I guess I'm mainly in charge of the wildlife areas up here as well, and the roadsides. So it's kind of a balancing act, especially certain times of the year when stuff needs to be sprayed and seeded. So kind of a balancing act that keeps it interesting.
And Alex, when I was there with you all at Maine's Grove Lodge, you shared with us a couple of rows that were being harvested for forbs, a couple of rows of forbs being harvested. Was that a research project that you were involved in, or can you shed a little light on that?
So yes, we work with that specific plot. We have one. We work with the DNR, Bill Johnson, down there in Brushy Creek. We have it's a, I can't remember how wide it is. It's 300 feet long. Prairie plugs is ironweed, and with that, we take care of it, grow it, and we harvest the seed, which we just did this week. And we'll dry it here, take it down to Brushy Creek where Bill is, and in change, he'll weigh out the seed what we get, and he'll give us pretty good diverse forward mixed seed. Pretty much anywhere we feel we need to, or we normally try to pick out a very good spot for it because it's pretty quality seed.
That's a great story. Great story. Something cool going on there. I like that. Oh, here's a question from Jim. So how do we get a roadside project started in my county? Well, who wants to give the pitch?
Ryan, this sounds like a question for you.
Well, first off, I would just suggest you need to contact Christine Nemec with the Tallgrass Prairie Center down in Cedar Falls. She is the IRVM program manager, so she'd be the one to talk to, and she can kind of help you get your IRVM plan started and established, and help you start jumping through the hoops to getting your program started. Also, Tara Von Was with the Iowa DOT. She's with the Living Roadway Trust Fund as well, and she will help you with your management plan and how to get your application in.
And I should probably make a plug here, because if you want to learn more about what roadsides are all about, any of the folks that are on this call here today, there's a roadside conference dedicated to this subject coming up, and I think it's in October. Any of you guys gentlemen have the dates by chance?
I think it's the 4th through the 6th.
There we go. And that's
first week of October.
Iowa Falls, I believe, first week in October. I'll put that information in the follow-up email that I send folks. It's open to the public. Great presentations. You'll get to see these folks and get a feel for what roadsides are all about if you don't have that opportunity in your county. Hey, what plant species mixes are recommended for roadsides and which maybe are not?
We usually base ours, I mean, roadsides, they seem like kind of a one style deal, but you have a lot of variance in the right of way. I think Alex talked about it a little bit in his video. There's some right of ways that are extremely wet. There's some that are always dry, some with super steep slopes, some that are very level, very wide, easy to get into. You know, really, we kind of use the same mix for everything unless it's a super wet area or a super steep area. And on our super steep areas is where we're going to really try to seed drier plants, lots of grasses to kind of help with erosion, some of those deeper rooted grasses. Then our wetter areas are areas that we really try to focus all of our wet species on, sedges, forbs, stuff like that.
I think you nailed it, Tanner.
Great, excellent. So, question here. Pollinator enthusiasts get very upset when they see ditches get sprayed and mowed this time of year. Do you think some counties aren't as cognizant or caring of the impacts, or is the harm lesser than the benefits? Is it just timing? Shed a little light on maybe some of that.
Well, it's kind of the nature of the beast. There's only certain times where you're able to get certain things done. So sometimes there's a little bit of a casualty of war, I would say. When it's time to be in there and get your management done, sometimes you have to. And once you get the bad stuff out, the good stuff will overtake it, is kind of how I look at things. So if you got an establishment where you're trying to put in your new prairie system, you start getting a bunch of thistles in a spot, or you're starting to get some woody vegetation, you got to get in there and get that managed. And you may lose a little, but it's going to bounce back. It's nature. It'll take its course. And once that prairie system is fully established, it basically takes care of itself.
To address the mowing, I don't, certainly in my county where we don't have a roadside program, it's a real commonplace for some of the road ditches to get mowed for hay, for forage and stuff like that. And so that is, you know, farmers or private individuals or ranchers doing those sorts of things. If you all are mowing, what sorts of sites are you mowing at this time of the year, if at all?
So, yeah, so I actually ran into a scenario that's very similar to what we're talking about this spring. It's one of our bigger seedings. We did, I think it's like 90 acres 2 years ago. So we're out this spring. We were out there doing our first maintenance mowing on this. There's a lot of sweet clover in it. I don't know if anybody's had similar issues this year. Sounds like sweet clover is pretty bad this year, but we did have a beekeeper who we've always gotten along great with. He's a great guy. And he moved his bees. He didn't know that this was the second year on that and that I was going to mow it again. He moved his bees out there to pollinate that sweet clover. And obviously I felt pretty bad because he did call me and tell me, hey, I didn't know you guys were going to mow that. Is there any way that I can move it to another sweet clover spot? And, that's kind of just like Ryan said, it's the nature of the beast. You have to be patient. I told him, we're going to mow down the sweet clover. I feel really bad that it happened like right when you're moving those boxes, because I know that's a lot of work to go through. However, if you wait, another year or two, you're going to have more than enough forbs and natives in that area for those bees, and it'll be a better working ecosystem, in my opinion, than monoculture like the sweet clover.
Great point. And so if you guys are mowing, it's really maintenance mowings on newly seeded areas. I mean, you're not just out mowing the ditches to mow the ditches. Doesn't sound like you have time anyways, even if you wanted to. So.
Yeah, in Dickinson County, and it depends on all in the county, but we have a no mowing, no haying policy. So you have to get a permit through our roadside program to do that. Doesn't mean that everybody does, but it does allow people in our county that permit system to know whether or not their neighbors are going to be mowing, and that kind of avoids most of that contact for us.
Got it.
It's basically the same for us here too. Our secondary roads, they mow the shoulders, and that's all that gets mowed. And you get the occasional rogue farmer that wants to mow in front of all his fields, and there's really not a lot you can do for that. But when it comes to us mowing, it's just site prep for a new area we're going to seed, or just maintenance mowing is the only mowing that we do in the roadside.
Yeah, pretty much same with us. We're really rural, and a lot of farmers tend to mow next to their fields, but there's no county policy on that. Is what it is, I guess.
I believe there's a state mowing law, but it isn't enforced very well. You're supposed to only be able to mow public right-of-ways within 200 yards of a residence, but I think there's kind of like a bylaw, like a little loophole, that they say if they see any sort of noxious weed and they're managing, and they can get away with it. So if they mow 6 miles and they saw one thistle, they can get away and do it scot-free. We don't have a lot of that problem, but there are some areas in our county where mowing's a little more prevalent than in others. And with our plantings, all our signs say no spray, no mow, prairie restoration site, and we haven't had many issues with people going in and mowing those down.
I had a nice ditch that I was monitoring on my drive every day, and it had some really nice forbs in it, and I loved it. And I saw that they were hanging around it. I was like, oh, please don't do it. And of course they did it, but they must have got their tractor stuck because there were some big ruts there. And so I haven't seen it mowed for 2 years since. Even in the dry year here, they did. So must have learned their lesson. Anyways. A tree question. So tree question, does the state DOT or your county allow trees closer into the right-of-way when the highway gets closer into town or the city? So if folks are looking at trees as a traffic calming element, which is important from a design perspective, is that something that's allowed? Well, maybe not allowed, but is anybody looking at those types of things? Any comments or anything you know there?
Yeah, so I would just say, from a city perspective, I do think there's cities that definitely want that buffer there. But a large part of what Roadside Manager is dealing with is mainly trees that are in pretty desolate areas that can cause really bad drifting in the winter. which is what we're taking care of. And then of course, trees that cause safety concerns as far as blind spots. I know that there's a lot of trees out there from areas that are in the county going into the city. And I don't usually mess with those too much unless they're an actual danger to like a four-way stop or something, or if it is in a spot where somebody could go off the road and hit it with their vehicle, it just needs to come out. But fence line stuff, we try not to deal with too much.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Well, folks, speak now or forever hold your peace. Any last questions for our panel here? Hey, I got a real quick question. Round robin. And because Ryan, you're right there to my upper right on my screen, what's your favorite prairie plant or forb or grass or?
Oh, I've got a couple of them, but there's just something to be said about butterfly milkweed. That's probably my favorite one. And then compass plant to me is just, it blows my mind on how big it is. I'm not a real huge person, but it's just neat when I can stand by one and just look up and it just goes and goes. It's almost to me.
Excellent. Tanner?
As far as grasses go, I kind of told you a story about my favorite grass was porcupine grass, because when I was doing a field class, my professor, I had no clue what it was. He just grabbed it and then never told anybody what it was called, and he put it into my mesh hat and it spindled its way down and started poking my head, and I was like, ow, this hurt. And he goes, well, it should. It's called porcupine grass. Now you'll know it forever. And it never left my mind. My favorite forb would probably be cup plant. Just so unique. It just looks prehistoric. I really like it.
Alex?
Mine would probably have to be compass plant, blazing star. Go down the roadside. I mean, they catch a corner of your eye. And, you know, if they're established, your prairie's well on its way to be established too.
Fantastic. Well, you all are certainly unsung heroes and part of the crew that makes our lives more enjoyable here in our respective counties. If you don't have a roadside manager in your county, there's only about half counties have roadside managers, half don't. Certainly contact Christine Nemec if there's some interest. Contact your supervisors and ask them if that's a possibility. It's certainly a decision that'll have to be made at that level of government. But boy, you can see all the great work that can be achieved within your county. And so keep that in mind. And one more quick plug, folks. This is a REAP assembly year. And so REAP is the Resource Enhancement and Protection Program. So if you have personalized plates, part of the REAP plates, some of those dollars go into the REAP fund. And REAP helps to fund things like roadsides and others. And so there will be an opportunity this fall for you to button up your coat and come out and advocate for REAP. It's a great program, and we need folks to stand up and say that it's worth it to them. And I know these gentlemen know the value of REAP and the roadside program because they see it every single day. And hopefully this webinar shared a little sneak peek with you on what it's all about as well. So with that, thanks everyone. This will be recorded. We'll get the link out to you. Thanks to our panel. You all have a great day, and now back out to the heat, huh? Bye, everyone.